Oh, you know what? I think I messed up my, hang on. Hang on. Man, I think I've messed up my device. Can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. All right, my microphone might be terrible, so I hope that that is not the case. Let me just have a look. Sorry about that. All right, you can hear me, and that's really all that matters. So, hi, welcome. It's Friday. It's November 27th. For those of you in the United States, it's the day after Thanksgiving, so I hope you are all enjoying a long weekend. I am, so that's awesome. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. We have a good show today. It was a short week for news, so we're going to talk about Discovery and pretty much just Discovery. I also have some visual aids. It's my Thanksgiving leftovers. Yeah. So I wanted to start off just asking you guys in the chat, tell me what you did for Thanksgiving, if you did anything. I'm curious. I also wanted to share with you. So, this is a Star Trek news podcast. So obviously I would like to share a Thanksgiving recipe, like a homemade Thanksgiving recipe. And it's for my favorite sandwich ever after Thanksgiving. So I'm going to show you. This is turkey, cranberry sauce, and cream cheese. It's that easy. It's, on nice 12-grain bread, none of that 7-grain crap. 12-grain bread, nice thick layer of cream cheese with white meat, turkey, and cranberry sauce, whole bean, whole whatever, or jelly, depending on what you like. It's perfect. The addition of the cream cheese just makes it, so that's good. There's my sharing my homemade recipe with you all, so I hope you enjoy it. And of course, pecan pie, which is the superior pie, of course, for Thanksgiving consumption, although we do have a pumpkin pie in the house as well, so, So, right, after all that, I just want to say hello to some people. William has got his Maine Coon there, which is wonderful. For those of you who had maybe knew me for a long time, I used to actually show Maine Coons. When I was a teenager, me and my family, we nationally campaigned Maine Coon show cats. We had a couple of national winners. If you go back in CFA yearbooks, you can find us there. I don't have any pictures. There's some back on my old Instagram account, I think, somewhere. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Maine Coon, so it's wonderful to have a bit of Maine Coon representation on Star Trek with Grudge. They is wonderful because it's actually, you probably know, it's actually 2 boy cats playing a girl cat. I'm offended by the fact that they keep referring to her as fat or pudgy or heavy or whatever, because she's not. She's a totally perfectly healthy Maine Coon cat. But yes, William, hello, and give your rather large kitty a little scratch on the head for me, please. Paul, Hosen, Mohammed, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, sorry, there's no shows this week. I am basically enjoying the time off, eating a lot, and sleeping in. In fact, I slept in today. This is why my lunch is here and not in my stomach yet. I will be eating that and probably adding some stuffing and things to it in a little bit. So yeah, Zach, Andrew, Peter, I see a lot of familiar names, so I'm really pleased that you guys all come and said hello. Yeah. Hal, I'm going to come back to you. Hal says, what are your thoughts on the line from this week's episode on how Spock became the person he did because of Michael? It will not surprise you to know that I have thoughts on these things. I'm writing your question down. Yeah. There's a lot of eating and watching pie in the chat. That's great. Andrew says he did a socially distanced Thanksgiving. That's pretty cool. Sounds like it was warm enough to do it outside, which is excellent. Zach, I disagree with the assertion of a sweet potato pie being better than either of them, but I am happy for you to indulge in the sweet potato pie, and I will eat the pecan pie. So there we go. Right, so let's get on with the actual show. I actually have, okay. This year was the first year that I actually made gravy for the meal. And if you are interested, I have a gravy story. It's a very boring gravy story. But if you'd like to hear the gravy story, let me know, and I'll tell you at the end of today's episode. So, right, so let's kind of get on with it. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about Unification III, which, of course, we knew was going to be a big deal. Not only because of the really, really subtle hint of the title, but also Star Trek, the official channels for the past week have been putting out all sorts of hints, oh, here's this primer on how Vulcans and Romulans were getting back together, and they were being completely unsubtle about the whole thing, which is fine. I'm cool with that. I just want to talk a couple, I'm extremely disorganized. I have a whole bunch of random thoughts that I just wanted, either things that just stuck out to me or just things that tickled me. And then I want to talk about that bigger theme of unification, but I'm going to save that to the end so we have a big chunk. It gives you guys a chance as well to have some questions about the actual the concept of unification and how it worked in this episode. So yeah, okay, so first I gotta start off with an expression of disappointment in the fact that nobody has given me nearly enough credit for the fact that I totally called they were gonna promote Tilly. I totally called it on Monday on Twitter. It was half a joke. I can't remember. It came up in conversation, and I was like, oh my God, they're totally going to promote Tilly. And I thought, not promote, make her first officer, which of course is a completely ridiculous concept. We'll come on to that in a second. And then I was just thinking back on all the things that had happened, and they were dropping not very subtle hints about that. I mean, the whole thing, the previous episode in Scavengers, where she was directing people in engineering, and of course that moment when she told Saru was you have to tell the Admiral. They were dropping not subtle hints about the fact that Tilly was going to get some kind of leadership position, which she absolutely deserves, and goes nicely for her character and the way that they've developed her character. But I lost my train of thought. But yeah, on Monday I said, they're going to make her first officer. And then I thought, I'm just, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to put it in writing. And I think one person, I think it was Al Rivera from Cryptic Studios, was like, yep, ooh. Everybody else was like, don't be ridiculous. And I would just like to, because you know that I like to gloat a little bit when I'm right. Sure enough, it happened. Excuse me. I'm curious to see what you guys think of it. I don't understand. I think it's just hang on. I'm sorry, my throat is giving me problems today. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense from yeah, she's an ensign. But of course, technically, I guess the first officer position is not a ranked position. It generally goes to somebody who's the highest ranked, because that is the implication that they have a leadership position within the crew. But there's no reason that an ensign couldn't be an acting first officer. So personally, I'm okay with it. If we take characters as they have been written on the page, no other character in that crew, no other crew member has demonstrated that level of leadership besides Tilly. They just haven't. Now, you can argue whether those characters are as they've been written on screen or whether they are more than they've been written on screen. So, I'm sure there's like a technical television production way of describing the difference between those two things. One is these characters have a life and we are just viewing a little window into it. In that case, there's probably some leadership demonstration that's been going on off screen that we don't know about that probably would make somebody else better than Tilly. But on the other hand, you've got if you think that the only things that happen are the things that we see that the writer is right, then there's surely there. I personally don't think that there's a better candidate. Like Michael Burnham, Tilly is one of those people that people on the crew seem to follow. She's got that quality that people look up to her and they respect her regardless of her rank. So anyway, I won't talk too much about that. I just would like to remind you all that I said it on Monday. So there. Anyway, another little fun thing. This was almost a bottle episode. I don't think it was quite because they did go to Starfleet headquarters right at the beginning. But this made me, there were a lot of things that made this episode feel like old school Star Trek to me, like TNG Star Trek. And one of them was that this was almost a bottle episode. The action took place basically entirely on Discovery, which I did think was weird because why didn't they even go down to the planet at all? Like that was a weird thing to me. But if you remember back in the day on TNG, and actually all of that era ones, they would have bottle episodes where they were just on the ship, where they didn't have to do anything on location. They didn't need any other sets. They could just use what they had. That feels super Trekky to me. And what comes next? Holodeck episodes, which I am... I don't genuinely think that there's going to be any holodeck episodes in this season of Discovery. But of course, one of the big stories this week was that Star Trek, the official channel, the official Instagram channel, did confirm that holodecks now exist on Discovery. I don't know if you guys all caught that. It was really weird. The reason I say I don't know that it'll turn up in the show is because technically, I guess an Instagram post, an in-universe Instagram post, isn't technically canon. If the animated series is excluded from canon, so is probably Instagram. But in the Jet Reno personal log that they posted on the official Star Trek Logs Instagram account, Jet Reno talked about the holodeck and talked about going to Rhizona Beach. And so it just seems to me, so while we're hitting all the greatest hits of like Trek things, first comes a bottle episode, next comes a holodeck episode. So I'll be looking forward to that later this season of Discovery. It's probably not going to happen. Also in this, that was super Trekky feeling, which just got me all excited. Redressed sets. This is where I show off my sort of production nerdiness. I used to love it. In TNG did this a lot. I used to love it when they'd redress a set. Like they had a set that was supposed to be something, and then they just make it into something else. And I can't even think of good. The battle bridge used to be the bridge from something else, or they'd redress a room in some other way to make it fit, whatever. They totally redressed a set. I think it was the mess hall that they redressed to be the hall or whatever for the Takal and Ket. Which, by the way, for those of you who play Star Trek Online, that felt a lot like the names of the Iconians, but it's fine. You could argue that they actually redressed the actual room on the actual Discovery in universe, but I'm ignoring that part because the idea that they redressed the set and they like made it obvious that it was redressing was just made me really excited. So those are some like stupid. Ever since Discovery started, there's been a lot of people going, this just doesn't feel like Trek. And it's true that so far in those first 2 seasons, it really didn't feel like Trek to me either. But I was like, there's no point in debating whether it feels like Trek because it literally is. This episode, in fact, this whole season, they've been hitting some of these touchstones of that feel like in your chest as a Trekkie, as somebody who has lived and breathed this fandom for 30 years. These stupid little things feel like Trek, and I loved that. I just absolutely loved it. I have some other random thoughts here. Shame on Adira. Why didn't Adira give Stamets a chair? They make him stand in a room with the door closed and stand there. I mean, I know it's an instantaneous thing, but I really feel like they could have given him a chair. Yeah. So the other thing that I want to say before I get onto some other heavier things is that this does not undo the Kelvin timeline. I've seen that discussion a little bit, and listen, I'm not an expert on the whole Kelvin timeline thing. It's very confusing to me. It's been 11 years. And I still get it confused. But the Kelvin timeline branched back when Kirk's daddy died, right? Way back, before Discovery happened at all. So this doesn't undo any of that. I have to go back and watch this again to see what they talk about Spock, because I kind of thought that they said something about Spock died. And I can't remember in the prime timeline because he didn't die, he disappeared. So, but in any case, this doesn't have anything to do with the Kelvin timeline. I actually had a weird outlandish theory that they were going to reunify the Kelvin timeline and the prime timeline in this episode. I'm kind of glad that didn't happen because that would have been dumb. But yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk quickly about the Qowat Milat. Actually, let me catch up with the chat real quick. Hang on. Some excitement about the holodeck in there, which is great. Hosen Zarfungal brings up Harry Kim. I don't know what to say about that. Yeah, Andrew, no, not Andrew, Zach, definitely. I want a holodeck episode. I just think they're so great. Plus, I want to see them reimagine a holodeck. I also want to see the Star Trek fandom lose their lunch over whatever they come up with for a redesigned holodeck, because that seems to be the order of the day. Oh, and look, Chris is here. Everybody say hi to Chris. Hi, Chris. Yeah, right. So now we're sort of moving into the slightly more serious part of the discussion. And it's not going to be totally serious because if you met me, but I wanted to talk very quickly before I get into the actual big story of unification. Qowat Milat. So this was a huge callback to Picard. And it wasn't necessary. They didn't have to call back to Picard in order to make this episode work. But I think that it was a really nice use of the mechanic of sort of tying into series. Generally speaking, I like my Star Trek to kind of stand alone a little bit. I think when they do those crossover elements, it makes the universe feel smaller, and I don't really like it. But in this case, I think they used it in a really effective way. So the Qowat Milat are the sect of basically women Romulan monks, for better, I don't think that's the right term exactly, but they live by the rules of absolute candor. And I think as an as a vehicle for enabling or facilitating Romulan and Vulcan reunification, I think that it's really great that the writers chose to use them as sort of a tool to facilitate that happening, and as a really key part of the unification process. I think that's wonderful. I thought it was really, really stupid that it was Burnham's mom. I'm just gonna say that. Um, it in this episode, it felt like the writers' room went, "Oh, right, because Burnham was really worried about finding her mom. Let's just sort that out so that we know where she is." Now, I hesitate to make any like firm judgments on plot elements like that, because obviously we haven't seen the whole series yet, and we don't know how that's going to play out, if it's going to play out, if we're ever going to come back to it again. But for me, that really stuck out as an unnecessary, overdramatic plot twist. You didn't need Burnham's mother there in order to have somebody from the Qowat Milat use that lever of absolute candor in order to get Burnham to kind of eventually get us to the end of the episode. And it just introduced a level of soap opera melodrama that really took me out of it. So I really didn't like that part. But having said that, I'm gonna hold off judgment. We'll talk about it when we do like an end of season recap, whether that actually like ended up being like a big thing or not. But for me, that was kind of a little burr on an otherwise quite smooth episode, and I would rather they didn't do it. But in the bigger picture of using the Qowat Milat as sort of a facilitator for the reunification, I thought that was really great. So, right, yes, it's 1:22 p.m. and I guess I better actually get around to the actual story of unification. And I haven't forgotten about Spock. I'll talk about him in a second. I was really, really pleased with the way that they handled this. Was a huge undertaking, and I was really afraid they were going to mess it up or in some way invalidate the kind of emotional weight that Unification I and II had back in TNG. I was really worried they were going to mess it up, and I really don't think they did. I love the fact that the Vulcans and Romulans have united, and it's it's a bit of a tenuous reunification. I love the fact that they've withdrawn from the Federation. I love the fact that they are mistrusting, but then also trusting in a way. So if we think back outside of Discovery canon and into the larger Trek universe canon, of course, the last thing we've seen is the failings of the Federation just before Picard, and then of course during Picard. And so the work of reunification has clearly happened sometime after the events that we've seen in Picard, and then before Discovery season 3. I think it's wonderful that the Vulcans, who helped us as humans kind of, at first contact onwards, I think it's wonderful that they have taken the Romulans on and help them rebuild, because I think that's really important. The Romulans were kind of really lost. I wonder if there's a little bit of I don't know what the right word is, ulterior motive, probably, because of course Romulans still have the singularity drive technology, which they didn't talk about in this episode. But I love that the work that Spock went in, that Spock put into reunification of the two races has come to, it's still a work in progress, but I love that the fact that we see the fruits of that labor. I love the fact that this is an extremely Star Trek story of it's compassion and tolerance and rebuilding. What's interesting to me is the contrast between the way that the Vulcans and Romulans are sort of trying to rebuild, and they really want nothing to do with the Federation right now. And to us as viewers, and to Burnham and Saru and everybody, the Federation hasn't changed, but it clearly has. And watching that play out, because both of these bodies are good people. They're good groups of people, and they're disagreeing on the way forward. And that is a very Star Trek thing to work out. And I'm hoping to see more of that sort of going down the line. What does SB19 stand for, by the way? Super bad thing, number 19. I don't know. I don't know if they've said it or not. We'll see. I do want to talk about, so one of the themes that I've talked about so far in this season, well, and actually, if you go back and listen to Priority 1 for the past 2 years or 3 years, I hate the fact that Michael Burnham is the center of the whole universe. And of course, they kind of did it again. And this was the first time in a very long time that I felt that that was actually appropriate. Burnham, I mean, Burnham really was because of the way that all of her experiences have led up to this point, she really was the one who was going to need to be at the the center of this episode. And I don't think there was another person who could have done that job. She needed to have had the credentials. She needed to have the background to know that there was a thing that she could call them out on that would force them into confrontation. She had to understand both the Vulcan logic and the human, and you could argue Romulan, non-logical side, emotional side of things. And she had to have her own personal experience of humility and slight mistrust of the Federation, and her own experience as a science officer, in order to, all of those things kind of came together to what was the eventual end. And when she was stood up in front of the quorum, and she was watching them arguing in and amongst themselves, and you could that we got to the denouement of her going, you know, you guys working this out is actually more important than what I'm doing. That was a really great moment of humility, both for her and for the Federation, that I absolutely loved. I thought that moment was written with uncharacteristic compassion and intelligence. And in a way, I'm almost sad that they ended up getting the data, you know, because I felt like that was a moment of sacrifice for herself that we haven't really seen. And I kind of wanted it to actually be a moment of sacrifice. And it ended up not, but I'm okay with that. That was a really great moment, and I'm really pleased that they did that. The other moment that everybody says that they were crying on, which was the Spock turning up. I don't have that emotional connection to Spock and the Spock character that a lot of people do in the Star Trek fandom. I think he's a great character, but I see him as a significant character, but I've never felt that, like, that thing in your chest that some people get when they talk about Leonard Nimoy and about the Spock character. I've never felt that personally. I loved the fact that they managed to get Leonard Nimoy into the episode, because of course he was pivotal in creating the setup for everything. And I thought that they did it well. Like I said earlier today, I was really afraid they were going to mess this all up, and I just don't think they did, with the exception of Burnham's mom. Sorry, no disrespect to Sonia Sohn, who's the actor. That's really all I have. I know that was a little bit of a jumble and of my thoughts, but that's really all I've got about that. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and just have a look and see about your what you guys are chatting about. Everybody's saying hi to Chris. That's wonderful. Okay. Andrew says, I like Picard / Discovery expanding the Romulan culture. Yeah, Romulan culture has been sort of like a weird, like they've never really seemed like they had a very strong culture. It was just sort of like the baddies with the big shoulders, like going, we're totally going to come and screw you up. And then they never did. I find them very interesting, and I like the way that they're evolving those characters too. So let's see. Richard H says, I noticed she hid her ears. I'm assuming that's in reference to Burnham's mom. I never thought that they didn't wait. How do I there's too many knots. I assumed that they knew she was human. So the Co-op Malat seemed pretty chill because they let a boy in, right? So we'll see. Now that's interesting. Okay, so Zach has said the whole trial scene, especially Michael's mom, really didn't work for me at all and kind of ruined the episode for me. I agree with you. It was really kind of hard to watch. The part when her mom just sort of turned and started being like super rude to Michael, I was like, what are you doing? It didn't make any sense to me. I think the overall, this is why I try not to make too many judgments of what happens in a single episode because you don't know what's going to happen. Overall, I thought the trial was really, really good. The end result, you needed to have all of those moments in order to hit that end moment where she kind of had the revelation of this isn't important enough. And while I agree that the leading up to it was kind of clunky and kind of awkward, I think it was all necessary to get us to the end point where they were able to move on past the obsession with SB19 data. Yeah, see, Andrew McCaffrey says, who else had goosebumps when they used the clip of Leonard Nimoy? This is what I was talking about. I did not. Which makes me feel like a really horrible, unfeeling person, but I've never had that connection. Although I was glad to see it was in there, it just didn't hit that emotional note for me, but then I've never had that connection with Spock, so it's fine. I did have a weird moment where I was like, oh, so this is why Michael Burnham is the center of everything. And it goes back to Hal's question about Spock is there was a line of, Hal, you might have to repeat it. Was Spock who he was because of Michael. For the first time, I was watching her reaction to him and going, oh, so that's why she's the center of everything, because she's Spock's sister and Spock's the center of everything. So Michael's, I don't really think that's true. But it was the first time I actually felt like she was his sister, which sounds dumb, but I never really felt the connection between them kind of until now, when she was like looking back at her little brother, like her tiny little brother as an old man. I did finally feel that, but then I don't know. Carolina on tap. This one seemed like a budget saver episode. That's what I said. It was a bottle episode. Which I love. I love having those little insights, the relentless, super high budget episodes kind of dull it all for me. So when you get these little punctuations of bottle episodes or ones that are clearly done on the cheap, I love those. They sort of change the candor of the whole series for me, which is great. And Grant points out that the USS Yelchin is in there. That was the first black box that they found, and that's clearly a tribute to Anton Yelchin, which is they're really they're really good this season of doing little Easter eggs and little nods to fandom that sort of lets us all know that they're listening and they're watching, and that's kind of that makes me feel good inside. Paul, I do not have a heart of stone. It's just you don't get to choose who you have a personal connection with. So, okay. I will leave you with one last thought. Actually, this was a thought that came up from not this past episode, but the one from before. They need to tie off the whole Book Burnham thing, like toot sweet. No disrespect to the actors at all, but that kiss was the worst kiss ever. Is all I have to say about that. So, the USSJ. That would be good. They should, it should pull up right next to the USS Picard. And we should do that. Yes, BC, worst kiss ever. And I feel terrible for saying that because I don't want to make it a personal attack on the characters. They did a really good job of, I think they have good tension between Burnham and Book. But then it just doesn't, it goes like 98% of the way and then it just stops. I would like them to resolve that. But that's all I have to say. Anyway, thank you all. I'm going to go eat my food now. So I hope that you guys have all had a nice Thanksgiving holiday. I hope that you are having lots of leftovers. And if you are not in the States or you are not feasting this week, then I hope that you are finding something else to enjoy and have a nice relaxing weekend. If you like what we're doing here, please consider checking out our Patreon page. We're at patreon.com/Daily Star Trek News. Anything that you can do to help us out would be great. Me and Chris and Marina, who's not here, would appreciate that. That's really great. Also, there's an event that didn't quite make it into events last week because I was trying to do 2 weeks at a time. The gravy story. I'll do that as a bonus in a second. There's a Trex Giving, and I don't remember the website. I think trekalliance.org. I think it's going on now. So if you are still, I'm just looking it up now. If you're still wanting to do it, let me see if I can find it. If you are still looking for something to do this afternoon, then you can go and click over there. It's the Trex Giving. It's the Trek Geeks Network, I think, that are doing it. Okay, fine, gravy story. It's really a boring story. Basically, so I really like making macaroni and cheese. It's like the thing that I can make. When I was living overseas, in the UK, so I grew up on Kraft macaroni and cheese, and it was hard to find in the UK. You could find it at some specialized grocery stores, but mostly it was like I was depending on people sending it over to me. And my parents used to send me like the fancy Kraft macaroni and cheese, which by the way is not as good. But the sort of the fancy one, you had to do all these steps in order to make the sauce. And one day I was like, this seems a lot like just making macaroni and cheese. So I taught myself. I actually have a Betty Crocker cookbook that I got sent over years and years ago, because that's another thing that they don't have in the UK. Betty Crocker cookbook, their mac and cheese is really easy. So I learned how to do that. And to make mac and cheese, if you haven't, it's just a very simple sauce. You take a fat and some flour and you make it so it's smooth, and then you add a liquid to it. And then in the case of mac and cheese, it's milk, and then you put the cheese in, and it's very easy. And then I learned how to make a different kind of sauce. It's basically the same thing. And I went, hang on, so this is how you make sauce. So I'm not very good at cooking. And then it occurred to me like last year that this is basically how you're supposed to make gravy too. And so I finally went, because people who make gravy have always been like a total mystery to me. Like I don't get it at all. And then I thought, wait, it's just, the fat, the flour, the seasoning, and the liquid, right? So it's not hard. So I tried it last time with some roast. I think I did a roast chicken and it turned out okay. And then I was like, so this year I'm going to try it. And I did. I made actual gravy from the actual drippings of the actual turkey. And it turned out really nice. I was blown away and it was very exciting. So my point being on gravy is, yes, Zach showing off in the chat. Right. A roux to thicken most gravies, slurry if you need to reheat it and don't want to mess with it. Yeah, I got really lucky. I just got the fat off the drippings and mixed that with some flour, and then just did the rest of the drippings, honestly, to make the rest of the gravy. And it was very tasty. It's kind of salty because I use a lot of salt on my roast turkey. And I actually bought a sauce whisk recently, which has changed my life. A sauce whisk, if you make sauces, is actually a very good thing. It goes in the dishwasher and everything. So my point being, there is no mystery to gravy. It is just a sauce. And so if you can make mac and cheese, if you can make chicken a la king, if you can make any of that kind of stuff, you can make gravy. And I would highly encourage you to do so because it tastes so much better than the stuff, the weird gelatinous stuff in the jar. So, yeah. Zach in the chat says, I need to get more whisks. Yeah, a sauce whisk. I'm sorry, Chris, I have not brought a sauce whisk as a visual aid. I tell you what, after this, I will take a picture of it and I will put it on Twitter so everyone can see what a sauce whisk is. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for me. Thank you very much to everyone who's watched. I appreciate you tuning in for this special Unification / Thanksgiving special episode of Daily Star Trek Views. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your continued support. It really means a lot to me that you're here and that you're enjoying the show. That's all. I will see you. We'll be back. Remember, there's no show on Monday either, and we'll be back on Tuesday, and we'll be back here live again next Friday. So I hope to see you there. All right. Wait, what's my thing? I'm Alison Pitt. Live long and prosper.